Good day to you all. Welcome to another installation of Did You Know, a online ministry of Fredsville Lutheran Church in rural Cedar Falls, member of the ELCA. Welcome. This week we are going to start our series of biblical misconceptions. I introduced this series last week in a makeshift prologue video, if you will. And if you missed that one, just a recap. For the time being, each week I'm going to dive into some of the misconceptions about the well-known Bible stories. There are some things that are interesting that should be pointed out in reading the Bible, in understanding the stories, in just living out faith in general. And there's a series of topics that I've kind of collected over the time. And this week, we are going to start kind of easy. Not necessarily easy as in uh, easy, but less complicated than some of the other things. It's a bit more straightforward, if you will. And so, with that being said, the question is, did you know that there are two creation stories in the book of Genesis? Fact. There are two stories in the book of Genesis. If you look closely, starting at the very beginning of Genesis, Genesis verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1 through 2:4a is one account. And if your Bible has little paragraph headings, 2:4b, so in split chapter 2, verse 4.5, it probably says another account of creation. And that's because it's two different stories. There's one account and there's another account. And a lot of us, when we think of creation, we tend to mesh those stories together as if it was two versions of the same story. And just to kind of point some differences out, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to get fancy on this one, if you will. And here we have a bit of a breakdown of Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And just right on the surface, you can notice that the stories differ in what happens in them. In Genesis 1 is the 6 days, so the orderly account, if you will, of creation. You have the heavens and earth created from a formless void. You have light being created, light divided from darkness. You have the waters separated from the waters with the atmosphere and things like that. You have land separated from water. You have plants. You have the sun, moon, and stars. You have animals. And then you have humankind. They left off Sabbath, which is day 7, where God rested after seeing that all creation was very good with the creation of people, and then rested on the 7th day so as to recollect what had happened. And then if you look at Genesis 2, the order of events is slightly different. You have the heavens and earth created. Then plant life appears. So God brings up the garden and then puts man, male only, in the garden, then decides that it's not good for man to be alone. So then brings about all the animals, and then you have the naming of the animals, and none of them is a good mate or partner. And so then you have the rib removed and woman made from man's side. So those, on the surface, I could see how you would blend those together. And some would argue that Genesis 2 is just a zoomed in version, that it's the particular way in which people were created, focusing on creation of humans. However, theologically and scholarly, academically, that's not the case. They're actually written by two different authors. Genesis 1 is considered the priestly account. So the words, the names for God are different in both stories. If you were to look into the Hebrew, names of God are different. The intent is different as well. The Genesis 1 is actually a recasting of ancient Babylonian mythology, with Tiamat and some other Babylonian gods chaos dragons and being cut in half, and half becoming land and water, and thus subversion of chaos and darkness. You have the duality, the light and dark separating out, and things like that, which is the first one. The second one is more of a recount of how the relationship with God came to be. It's a relational God, not a creator, distant God. So even the attributes of God are kind of different in the stories. And so you don't have to take my word for it. Please look into the Hebrew, look into Babylonian mythology. Tiamat is the one that you want to look into for Genesis 1. It's pretty striking how similar they are, different sources. Yeah, so just with that little bit, hopefully shed some light on Genesis 1 and 2, gives you a little something to think about. Like I said, don't take my word for it. Please look into it, dig up the dirt on Genesis, if you will. And I'm always willing to talk about it if you wanna chat about Genesis or anything else, really. Let me know. Reach out. Comments on Facebook. You can email the church. You can find me on Facebook. You can message the church on Facebook. You can email me directly. However, you can get a hold of me. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you're thinking, if anything struck you. Otherwise, I would just encourage you to keep praying for our brothers and sisters in the various places where unrest is happening, that everybody stays safe, stays away from needless trouble. We know we have enough trouble as it is, so to cause more, it is what it is. You have to do what you have to do. But please take care of each other, stay safe, pray, read, do all those things. But please take care of each other, love one another, and be blessed. So until then, I'll see you on the other side for another Did You Know? Biblical Misconceptions Revealed next week. Thanks. Have a great day.